Okay, we're going to start at the Mishnah. Shimon Aimer. It's Mishnah Chaf Beis Amud Beis 22. 22b. And thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In the course of our learning, we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. Okay, so we start like this. Shimon Aimer. Shimon is, of course, the Rashbi. Shimon Aimer, Ein Zchus Teila B'mayim Amarim. There's no such thing as a merit for the bitter waters. The woman, the Sota woman that's really guilty, there's no such thing that she should survive or that it should be postponed or delayed just because she has this chus. Like before, this chus is probably this chus of Torah. Maybe she's helping her children or she's waiting for her husband to come home. That could be a chus, which we said that could cause a delay in the punishment. Thank you. There's no such thing according to Reb Shimon. If you say that his chus is Torah, that a merit is going to cause a delay in the curse waters, mada'ata, you're weakening. Means darkening. You're weakening the color. You're darkening or weakening. You're weakening the power of the water in front of all the women that drink, because they're going to think that it doesn't always work. It's not a perfect science, So that's a problem. And also, and also you're giving a bad name to the women that were really innocent, that survived the waters, and that they say, well, how do you know? Maybe they were really guilty. Maybe they were really guilty and they just had a schus. So therefore, he holds. People are going to say that they're really guilty. Who knows what they did? And the only thing why they survived, that's because of a merit. I don't know why no one's asking the bigger question. That if schus Taila, then how does she go back to be with her husband? She's forbidden to her husband. And that's the bigger question here. You see, we don't know if she was faithful. We know that the door closed on the two of them. So she drinks the water to tell us. If she dies, okay, then the marriage is over. If she doesn't, then they're allowed to go back together. If schus Taila, then how are they allowed to go back together? I thought that they're forbidden until she drinks the water. And after she drinks the water, then she's permitted. But how does schus Taila work? Yeah, I'm asking a question. No, if she drinks the water and she doesn't die, we assume that she's innocent. And there she is back to her husband. The only problem is, according to the other opinion before Reb Shimon, or Rebbe's opinion right here, Rebbe Yomer is chus Taila b'mayim amarim, ve'ina yeledes, ve'ina mishabachas, ela mesnavda ve'lechas, l'seifi meisa beis misa. Rebbe says that this chus is Taila. If she has a merit, then she could survive this. And the only thing is, she doesn't give birth, and she doesn't improve. Rather, she gets her condition dwindles, and at the end, she dies with the same thing. But the only thing is, what about that night? That's
According to the question, it's about the whole situation. By drinking water.
Yes, what happens that night if she becomes mutter?
Why can't she go back? But it's never going to be the same. That's why she's never going to have a kid. She's going to slowly.
I understand, but she's forbidden. She's forbidden to be with her husband.
But she drank the water.
She drank the water, but the reality is that she's forbidden. If she has a schus, if she's really guilty, right?
If she's really guilty, she should die.
No.
We don't know that.
I understand. But the truth is that because we don't know that, we say that she's forbidden. We say that she's forbidden to her husband until she drinks the water. And now she drinks the water. So we say that, okay, she must be innocent. But turns out drinking the water doesn't mean that she's innocent. Drinking the water means that either she's innocent or she has a schus.
But she's innocent till proven guilty.
Oh, okay. So you're saying.
No, but she gets sick.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm saying.
So she
that
walks out of the Beis
Sheena,
Hamikdash
Sheena.
a little a little weaker than she walked in. So then the husband can. She says, "No, don't worry. It's just a common cold."
I mean, things will go downhill in this marriage for her personally, passionately, and everything else, because there's always going to be that chashash.
Right.
from either
Okay.
the husband or her
Uh-huh.
guilt. But she didn't die. It's a living hell. It's like a life in prison instead of the electric.
I'm looking at the halachic condition. You're telling me like the spiritual.
6 p.m. news on
Okay. I think the Gemara mentioned this earlier, that this was an issue. Let me see. Misnavna the Rebbe. The Gemara asked this before. That if she's misnav, I guess if she's misnavna, if her condition weakened, then she's going to, if she gets this a weakness, so then she would be usher. We know that it's chustayla. We know, okay, we know that she's guilty and she's still and she's survived. Okay. L'sayfi Mesa, but Isa Mesa at the end, she ends up dying. Even according to Rebbe, that's chustayla. Her merits can delay the punishment, but she does end up dying with the same thing, where her stomach bursts and her thighs collapse. So she does have that same end result, even though it gets postponed. Okay, now the Mishnah takes a little twist on us. It gives us a list of differences between this and that, between a Kayan and a Kayan man, a Kayan woman, between a man and a woman. It's interesting, just like a list that we're going to have now. Nitmis minchasa actually kidsha bekeli. Let's say her mincha becomes tamei before it was put into the vessel. So this, her carbon mincha, her meal offering, we're talking about the Sota's meal offering, is like every other mincha that becomes tamei. At this point, it only has what's called kedushas damim, only the holiness of its value. What do you want to say?
the litmus test.
Oh, the litmus test. Okay. It only has the value of it only has the holiness of the value, which means that you can still redeem it and then use the money for another carbon. You redeem it. And what do you do after you redeem it? Well, what you redeem, you're allowed to eat you're allowed to eat contaminated food if you're not going to the Beis Hamikdash or anything. It's allowed to be eaten. A certain amount of contaminated food makes the person considered contaminated. It doesn't actually make him, but it makes him considered like he's contaminated. And then with the value that you get from either selling it or just redeeming it, then you buy another one. However, this is different once it's put into the klisharis, once it's put into the holy vessel, the service vessel. Then then it can't be redeemed. Then it needs to be burned. This is like every other carbon, every other mincha that has kedushas haguf. It's already itself sanctified. Then it needs to be burned.
So this is when it becomes tamei, in between the giving of it and the consumption. When is this tamei occurring?
Well, there's two. One is probably on the way into the Beis Hamikdash. That's before it's put into the keli. And the other one is once it's in the Beis Hamikdash, in the keli, it becomes tamei. Somehow it becomes tamei. I don't know how.
Sharetz landed on it.
Yeah, it's landed in the in the Beis Hamikdash floor.
Okay.
The following, their mincha is burnt. In other words, it's not eaten. Let's say the woman says that she admits, right? Even though it's already been put into the keli, and at a certain point, we're going to force her to drink. But there's no point in bringing in doing this if the scroll wasn't erased yet or anything like that. It's fine. If the scroll wasn't erased, we're not going to force her to drink, right? And we had two opinions when all of this was done. But if she says that she's tamei and the mincha was already put into the vessel, then that mincha needs to be burnt. There's a discussion when the kmitza was done, before the scroll or after the scroll. But whatever the case is, it's already in the vessel. So then the mincha needs to be burnt. The next case of burning the mincha, which means that it's not offered. Burning means not offered. Let's say witnesses showed up that saw that she's actually guilty. In other words, one witness at least knows that the door closed. Right? She was warned in front of two witnesses, and then one witness tells us that the door closed. According to Rabbi Shua, according to Rabbi Lesson, you need two, or according to one of them, you need two. According to one of them, you only need one. But then two witnesses show up that say that they actually saw the act, peeking through a window. Then, so then she's for sure guilty. So you don't bring the sacrifice anymore. We know already, just like she admitted. So the korban mincha is burnt. If she refuses to drink, talking about in a situation where they're not going to force her. So that's it. Okay, she doesn't drink. She doesn't have to bring the mincha either. The husband changed his mind. He was making this whole trip to the Beis Hamikdash. He says along the way, he decided, you know what, I don't want to do this. So they're not going to be able to be together. He's going to divorce her, but he doesn't need that she dies. So so they're not going to bring the mincha either. This is hard to understand. The husband had relations with her along the way. It's hard to understand, not how he had relations with her. It's hard to understand how the mincha was already put into the klisharis, and somehow he's had relations with her along the way. I guess what's happening is that we find out that he had relations with her along the way after it was put in. Tosfos asks, but then the whole thing was a mistake. The whole thing was a mistake. Why should it be considered consecrated? That we should have to burn it. Anyway, okay. Here we go through this list. Any woman that's married to a kayan, then instead of the korban, you see what happens with the mincha is you do a scoopful, a 3 fingers scoopful. That's called the kaimitz, and that gets burnt on the altar. That's offered up. The shirayim, the leftovers, are eaten by the kayanim. Now, unless the kayan himself is offering them, unless it's a mincha that's owned by a kayan, unless it's the kayan that's the owner of it, then his mincha is just totally burned. That's always how it is. Now, let's say there's a kayan that his wife is the saita. So, because he has a part of that mincha, the rule is that it has the rules of a mincha of a kayan, and you can't eat it. It has to be burnt. Bas Yisrael shenisas l'kayin min chasen nisrefes. Rashi over here says, no, it seems like we're dealing with here, at least according to the way Rashi is learning, we're talking about every mincha, not just the saita. Yeah, Tosfos quotes Rashi saying, "Echad mincha saita v'echad minchas nedava." Anyone that's married to a kayan is considered, the mincha is considered the korban of a kayan. Tosfos asks, says, Tema, minchas nedava, ma chelek yesh laba. It's possible that the woman has some property that's hers, and she could bring a korban without him having any ownership of it. We're according to see if it's a mincha saita, then of course the husband is part of that mincha. He's the one that's bringing her to it. He's the one that's bringing her. So it's the mincha is like sort of like from both of them. But if it's another mincha, just a minchas nadava, she says, I have this money, I got it from this. My husband doesn't have it. Someone gave it to me as a gift. It says it belongs to you, not to your husband. I want to give this to the Beis Hamikdash. So why is it all of a sudden a minchas? Why does he have any ownership of it? That's the Taisus question on Rashi. So according to Taisus, this would just be, we're dealing just with the carbon mincha, just with a mincha saita, just with a mincha saita. Okay. Whatever the case is, the wife of a kayan, her mincha is burnt as well, just like a kayan. Kayenes.
Because we learned, she owns a field. The husband only gets the neighbor's
Right.
field. So if she sold, let's say, 5% of that field and got money, and then wanted to do from that, would that be the sales case? Because it was from her possessions. The husband doesn't.
There's a problem with her selling it, I think, while they're married. I think because, okay. Did anyone else receive a site in the mail? Not a site, the Gemara site. Anyone receive a Gemara site in the mail? Anyway, okay.
Mail order brides.
You have
What
to
is
be
that?
a-
Mail order brides.
Mail order bride.
You have to be on the list for that.
No, I don't know. Hello, got one in the mail. Anyway, okay.
On the list.
Next case, or the contrast. That's what we're doing here. Contrast. Kayenes, Shenisis li Yisrael. This is not a wife of a Kayan. This is a daughter of a Kayan that marries a Yisrael, an Israelite. So her family, her last name is Cohen, and his name is Schwartz. So now it's her maiden name is Cohen. So Minchas Nechelas. If you don't follow her maiden name, her father, we followed who she's married to. And her mincha is eaten just like a regular Yisrael, like her husband is Yisrael. Okay, now the Gemara says, Ma ben kayan lekayhenes. What's the difference between a kayan and a kayhenes, and a woman kayan, a male kayan and a female kayan? Minchas kayhenes necheles. The mincha of a kayhenes that's not married to a kayan, then her mincha is eaten just like a Yisrael or a Yisraelis. Minchas kayan ain't necheles. But if it's a kayan, his mincha is not eaten. Then the Gemara goes on through this list. Kayhenes mischaleles. A woman kayan, this is totally not fair, but a woman kayan can become a chalala. However, kayan ain't mischalal. The kayan never becomes a chalal. So the Gemara is going to explain like where we have this, but basically, if a kayan lives with a woman that he's not allowed to live with, it's forbidden for whatever reason. So she becomes a halala, and he is perfectly fine. He can go on being a kayan. Which means what's the ramifications of a halala? There's a few, but one of them, first of all, is that she can't eat truma. She becomes pasal. She becomes pasal from the kayan thing. Also, the children become a halal as well. And for the kayan can have other children that they're not halal. It's only her children that will be only if it's from her would it be halal. And then when it comes to marriage, a kayan cannot marry any of those children. Yeah. Kayhena, and it goes on forever, for all generations. Kayhenes mitama lemesim. Kayhenes is allowed to go to a woman kayan. That means her last name is Kayan. Cohen, and she's her family is Kayanim, but her husband's not a Kayan. She's just from a family of Kayanim. She's allowed to go to a cemetery. So all this family has to wait outside. All the men of the family, she's allowed to go in to the cemetery. In Kayan mitamal mesim, but a Kayan is not. We're going to see from where we get that from later. Kayan eichel b'kachi kadashim. The karbanis of a chatas or a nasham or a karban mincha, which those are when oil is not eaten anyway, but those karbanis are kadshe kadashim, are very holy. Only a kayan can eat from it. The pasuk says, "Kol zachar b'kayanim yochel oisam." Only a male is allowed to eat, and a female not. Ben kayhenes eicheles b'kadshe kadashim. Now the Gemara goes on to other more contrast. Ma bein ish lisha, what's the difference between a man and a woman? Halachically. Ha'ish peireya upeirim. A man that's a metzaira. You know, for the parsha, they throw this in. A man that's a metzaira has to let his once he is what's it called when it's nechlat, when he's determined, when he's definitely the metzaira, he has to let his hair grow wild, and he also has to tear his clothes. However, any isha pirasa piramis, but a woman that's a metzaira, she does not need to let her hair grow wild, and she doesn't need to tear her clothes. A man is allowed to make his young son a nazir by saying, "You are now a nazir." But a woman can't do that, even though she's the mother, but she can't do that. The father has the rights to that. Shimshon was from the Malach. Did we ask at the beginning? Where did we say it? Did we ask him? We said in Nazir that it came from outside. Yeah, that came.
Separate.
Yeah, remember that? Say yes.
That was the answer.
Yeah. That we said it came from the outside. It came from, it was imposed on them from the outside.
David Cohen made his son a Nazir.
So how do you get out of it?
He gathered together a Beis Din, the son did.
Oh. When he was 12 or 13?
I think when he was 12, I'm not sure. I wondered about that when I read it, how he could do that at the age of 12, but that's what I read.
I also wondered about that, 12 or 13.
Yeah. It's not considered a davar another by Shimshon. It was never expressed. That's why if someone says I'm a nazir like Shimshon, remember that's how we got into that. They said it wasn't, according to one opinion at least, it wasn't considered a nazir because he never expressed. It has to be something that's created. The nazir of Shimshon wasn't created by a person. Okay. The real question here is Chana. Chana made Shmuel into a nazir. That's the big question. How does Chana make Shmuel a nazir? Shmuel was considered a nazir. It's the Radak on Chumash, on Tanakh asks. I don't know the answer. So,
She do it due to the code.
no, she said it was going to be given to Hashem.
Maybe.
But maybe it was Rahat Elkanah who agreed to it
Aha.
after the baby was born.
Deal. Aha.
Business deal.
Okay. 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 Could be. Ha'ish megaleach al naziris aviv. A man is allowed to take his father's karbanas, that his father was a nazir, he passed away, and he's allowed to then take his father's karbanas and bring them as if he's a nazir also. Him and his father are nazirim. His father passed away. When he completes his nazirs, he's allowed to take his father's karbanas that were designated and to bring them as his own. However, a woman is not allowed to do that. A woman can't take her father's karbanas that he passed away and bring them as a woman is allowed to be a nazir also, nazira, right? A man can marry off his daughter if she's under 12. He can just accept kedushin money from another person and say, okay, you're now married to my daughter. But however, the mother can't do that. A man can sell his daughter as a maid, as a slave. But a woman is not allowed to do that. A man is stoned if he's deserving of the punishment of stoning. He gets stoned when he's naked. And Veini Isha Niskelas Aruma, but a woman is not still naked. We said that her embarrassment is more than even though the clothing is going to slow down, is going to cause more suffering, it's going to slow down the death, so she'll suffer more, but her embarrassment is more than that. And so she would rather be stoned. She would rather go through more suffering, but not be that embarrassed. It was one of I think that was part of that. Also for tznius. But what was the main reason? Was it tznius or was it her embarrassment?
I don't know.
It was just tznius.
Again, throwing her off the roof.
Yeah.
Walking her there.
Okay.
Take it.
Ish nitla. I thought they anyways covered. Just they put something that covered the
I
man.
think had a long.
Right.
The woman was-
Take it.
Right.
Take it. Let us.
Ish nitla veina isha nitlas. Oh, a man after the stoning is then hung till the evening and before he's buried. But the woman is not hung before, even after the death. After the death, they would then hang them until evening, but not a woman. Ish nimkar b'gnevasa. If a man steals and he doesn't have money to pay back, he's sold as a slave to be able to make the payment
I have a question on that.
restitution.
If they weren't stoned, normally we have this thing that we remove the person from the gallows because it's just not
Right.
nice. So here you have a dead person, and now you're going to hang the dead person up to show. The whole
I don't know.
concept is-
I don't know.
I think it was to show.
Right.
What they didn't see this person thrown off the roof.
Maybe somebody missed it.
Yeah, they got late. They were late to the show. Zooming it.
Remember that kid that misbehaved? Was in the Orthodox school. You know this? So after 2 weeks, the principal says, you got to take your son home. So he puts him in the conservative. After 2 weeks, principal says, you got to take your son home. He's misbehaved. Puts him in the reform school. It prints 2 weeks. That's it. He says, okay, I don't have a choice. He sends him to a Catholic school. So after 2 weeks, he gets a call. He says, I want you to come down. Anyway, perfect. Behavior is good. Everything is. So why? So they asked the kid, how come your behavior changed so much? I walked in, I saw that kid hanging on the wall. I know. But yeah, it's business.
I taught once in a Catholic university, and they had one of those on every wall. Instead of mezuzah.
That's true.
St. John's
In
University.
any Catholic.
St. John's.
Parochial places,
Notre Dame.
even in the
Oh, yeah?
hospitals.
That's what's going on over there. That's it. Yeah.
It's on the walls, it's on the mosaics.
I know a guy that's a professor of math at what's called Notre Dame. He's a Ger Chassid. It's with Payas and everything. I wonder how he feels like walking in there. He's a Ger. He became a Ger Chassid. No connection, Ger and Ger. But it's interesting. You know, feel funny. Okay. Veina isha nimkeres b'gnevasa. A woman is not sold after if she steals and she can't make restitution. She's not sold anyway. So what would happen? I don't know. I guess she has to pay it back slowly. Tana Rabbanan. Starting in a brisa. There's a long mishnah with all types of details. Any woman that's married to a kohen, her mincha is burnt, just like her husband's mincha. Ketzad. How does this work? Well, Kehenes Levi of Yisrael Shnesis L'Kohen. It doesn't matter what her maiden name is, what her father's family is, whether the father's a Kohen, a Levi, Yisrael, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that her husband is a Kohen. So her mincha is going to be burnt. Ein minchas necheles. Her mincha cannot be eaten. Because the husband has a portion in it. This is where Rashi says. Rashi over here says, they're talking about both. Because the Kayin has a portion. But the problem is, you also can't burn it. because she has a portion, and the rule is that a regular kayan has to be a regular carbon minch has to be eaten. What we do is we treat it like a regular carbon. We do a kmitza, we do the scoopful, and then we burn the scoopful. What about what's left over? It's supposed to be eaten. Hashirayim kreven batzman, but we burn the shirayim as well. So we do it in 2 steps. If it would just be a minchas kayan, we'd burn it all at once without a kmitza. Now that it's that she has a portion that we do a kmitza, but we still burn the rest. The Gemara asks the question: We have a pasuk that says that you're not allowed to put on any yeast or honey on the altar. It says from it. It says mimenu, from it cannot go on the altar. That means only things that are allowed to be darshan it independently. Only thing that's are allowed to go on the altar are allowed to go on the altar. Anything that's not supposed to go on the altar is not allowed to go on the altar. We add into it one extra rule over there. So if that's the case, so then there's a potential that this carbon should not be going on the altar because part of it belongs to her. How are we allowed to just put it on the altar, just like to cover our bases, right? It's really should not be burnt. It's a violation. Amar Yehuda Bered Reb Shimon ben Pazi. Yehuda, the son of Reb Shimon ben Pazi, says the Masiklu l'Shemishim in l'Shum Eitim, that he puts it on not as an offering. He puts it on as if it's firewood. On the side of my Gemara, I have a question. I don't know who it is. It's Mem Kuf. The question they ask says, 1 second. It says that you're not allowed to use straw, kashik straw or stubble as firewood on the altar. How are you allowed to use flour as firewood? Anyway, it doesn't have an answer to it. But he quotes the Rambam, this Mem Kuf. I don't know who he is. It's we are saying now that it is permitted, but according to this Rambam, it would not be permitted. So this is a question without an answer. Yeah, I have this Gemara I got from my wedding that has these additional comments in it. It was a Garari print.
You get it from Ray Citron?
Yeah. Woo! The custom. But it has these extra comments that doesn't tell you exactly who it is. Just like this little like penned in marks. So he puts it up as if it's firewood, and that way he doesn't have a prohibition as an offering. Rabbi Lazar, like Rabbi Lazar says, the Tanya was taught in a brayso. Rabbi Lazar over here would be Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua, the student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Lazar, do you have Rabbi Lazar or Rabbi Eliezer? You have a Lazar, okay. You have Eliezer? So then it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Harkness. I have just Reish Aleph. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, the Reach Nichayach Yatamala Avalatamale L'Shemeitzim. That you're not allowed to bring it up as an offering, but you're allowed to bring it up as firewood. The whole prohibition is only if it's an offering, but as firewood, there's no prohibition. So now we have our solution. Gemara says that's very nice, but honey, Rabbi Eliezer, that only fits with the Rabbi Eliezer Dislei Haisvara that holds like that. El Rabbanan Dislei Haisvara. What do the Rabbanan say if they argue on that? How are you going to offer up this woman's offering that's not allowed to go on the altar? My answer is the Abdullah Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon. We have another solution. We're going to do what Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon says. We had both the Rashbi and we had Rabbi Elazar, his son, today. As we get closer to Lag BaOmer, it becomes more. Notice it. The Tanya was taught in a brayso. Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon Aimer Kaimetz Karev Basmei Vashrayim Mispazrin Al Beis Hadeshen. You don't actually offer it up. You put it on the ashes, on the place of the ashes. Now, which Beis Hadeshen is that? Because there were a few of them. The place of the ashes. Does the place of the ashes mean on the altar on the ashes? Or does it mean somewhere else? Because there was another Beis Hadeshen that wasn't there. Does it say on the altar on the ashes? What does it say?
Scattered on the place.
Okay. Now, what this is talking about is there's a machlekes regarding a chayva offering, an obligatory offering of a kayan, is it brought up on the is it entirely burnt? Is it entirely brought up on the altar? Now, a donation offering, everyone holds is entirely burnt. The question is a chayva offering. So Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon said that it's only a regular nedava. The Rabbanan said that it's whether it's a nedava or a chayva, whether it's a donation or a obligation. So what do they? According to Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, what do they do? He says what you do is like this: you do the kaimetz, and the rest of it is just put on the ash. So it's not eaten, but it's not also offered on the fire. And then the Gemara says, Rafil Rabbanan, and even the Rabbanan that say that it is offered on the fire, that's because that's a minchas kayin. That's why they say that it's entirely burnt, even though it's an obligation offering, but nevertheless they say that it's supposed to be burnt. However, Aval Baha, but in this case, where it belongs to her and she's not a kayin, right? So now we have two like partners in this, a kayin and a non-kayin, his wife and the kayin. So then what are we going to do? Afilu Rabbanan, the Rabbanan would also agree to Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon that the kaimetz is brought and the rest is spread over the ashes. That's how we would answer according to them. Okay, now we go through those details of the Mishnah. We say Bas Yisrael Anasua, a woman that's not a kayin, that's married to a kayin, so her sacrifice is also burnt, it's not eaten. My time, what's the reason? Is it seichel or seyachal? Seyachal, probably. It should not be eaten. Kayin v'lei kaihenes. This is only if it's a kayin, but not if her father was a kayin and she's not married to a kayin. It's only by the kayin's offering. Not it says kol minchas kayin. Kaihenes mischalelas kayin in mischala. We have that next thing which we said doesn't seem fair, that the kayin stays innocent after he has a forbidden relation, but the woman becomes a halala. Minalan, where do we know this from? Damakra, the pasuk says, "V'layechal zarei ba'amav," the prohibition. He should not profane his descendants amongst his nation. That means that he should not marry a woman that he's forbidden to, and therefore have children that are halalim. And we say like this: Zarai mischalal. The children become halalim. The truth is, the Gemara says that Yichalal means two chilulim. Him, the children and the woman. The children become halalim. But whatever the case is, who ain't a mischalal? He doesn't become a halal. It's only the children and the woman, the wife, that become a halalim. Or halala. Yeah. Kaihenes mitama. A woman kayin is allowed to go to a cemetery. My timer. What's the reason for this? Amakra, quoting sources. The pasuk says, "Emer ala kayin and bnei Aaron." Speak to the kayin and the sons of Aaron. Bnei Aaron v'lei bnei Aaron. It's only the sons, but not the daughters. The daughters are actually allowed to go into a cemetery. Kayin oichel b'kachim. A kayin is allowed to eat from kachim, from those sacrifices, the chatas. Not the oila because it's not eaten, but the asham in a mincha. The ksiv kol zacher b'kayin b'bnei Aaron yechlena. Any male from the sons of Aaron is allowed to eat. It says this by the carbon mincha. Ma beinish. What's the difference between a man and a woman? Taner Rabbanan. The pasuk says, "Ish ein li ela ish." I only know a man. Ish minayin. How do I know a woman? We're talking about the letting the hair grow wild now.
Gesund.
Yeshuaimer. And the pasuk says, "Batzeru asher bay," and the leper that's there. Harikan shnayim. Why is it harikan shnayim? It says it twice. It says Batzeru asher bay anega. Tzerua that has the spot of leprosy. And it only needed to say, it didn't need to repeat that, just needed to say what to do with his clothing. Why does it repeat that? Yeah, we're referring to both. I guess it means a man and a woman. And so why do you say before that it's a man? Linian shalamata, because we're going down to something that it says later, the next verse. It says ish peireya. Over there it says that his clothing needs to be torn and his head needs to grow wild. We're saying that it says ish, but it says previously is referring only to the ish, the clothing being torn and the hair growing wild is referring to the ish that it said previously, not to a woman. Only the father can make his son into a nazir, but not the mother. Rabbi Yochanan says this is an easy one. Halachi ben nazir. This is just the tradition, and that's it. No discussion. A man can use his father's karbanos to finish his Nazirite-ship, but not a woman. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says is also an easy one. Halachi ben nazir. This is a tradition. No discussion. A man can accept money to marry off his daughter, but a woman can't do that. It's talking about his young daughter. What's the source for this? It says, Now, Taisva says that actually what's happening is you have to look at the beginning of the pasuk. Beginning of the pasuk says, the father of the girl says to the elders, this is talking about by a Maitzi Shemra, where the man says that they didn't find that she's virgin. So they go to the gates of the city, which means they go to the court. The man says that I gave my daughter to this man, and he gives her a bad name, right? He makes a claim against her. So it says the father speaks to the elders, which is excluding, and part of his statement is, I gave my daughter to this man. That this means that the father is the one that's able to give, but not the mother. The Gemara is quoting the end of the pasuk, but really the source is the beginning of the pasuk. The father can sell his daughter as a slave, as a maid, but a woman cannot. It says that a man sells his daughter. It's clearly a man. A man is stone naked. My time of rug my sight. They stone him. My I what does it mean him? I say it's him that's stone naked, but not her. Maybe it means that a woman doesn't get stoned. They only stone him. They don't stone a woman. It can't be, because we have by the woman that's the girl that's raped. So if she was, it says that if a woman was not raped, so then she gets they have if she was betrothed, a woman that was betrothed. So then if she's not raped, then they stone her as well. So we have a clear source that she's stoned as well. So the Isai cannot mean that they only stone a man and not a woman. Isai means that they stone him with just as he is without clothing, but the woman has clothing. Sorry, I didn't read this right. If it would just mean him and not her, then we have the pasuk that the man and the woman get stoned by the Nara Marasa. Ella Isai, what rather it means, Isai means him, it just means him without his clothing, but not her without his clothing. Okay, that's all in the text itself. The man is hung, but not the woman. The woman is not hung after the stoning. My time, only him, but not her. Man is sold for his theft, but not a woman. My time, he is sold for his theft. His theft, not her theft. Okay, have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Question, Rabbi Smith.
Yeah.
Is it a mitzvah for a man who has a doubt about this whole process? In other words, could a husband say, well, I have a doubt, but I don't want to put my wife through that. I'll live with a doubt.
Yeah, we had a discussion at the beginning if this was considered a positive thing or if it's considered a negative thing when he becomes jealous. It says the
Thank you.
What does it say?
You too.
Have a good day.
Have a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos. Bye.
Chodesh, meaning it's starting now.
And a good Chodesh, yeah.
Yeah, baby. Move it.
We had a discussion if that was considered a
Move it,
positive,
move it.
something that he should do or something that he shouldn't do.
Your grandmother under the bus.
Oh, I'm out of here for this one. I'm
Did
already
it,
out.
did it resolve? Was it resolved?
I thought there were two opinions. I don't know.
Grandmother out of the bus.
I'm not here.
Okay, thank you. Good Shabbos.
Okay.
Shabbos. Thank you.
Shabbos, Eliezer.